I'm Julia. Welcome back to my channel, NB Library. This October I'm participating in TBR Harvest, which is a month-long reading challenge run by Leandra over at Leandra the TBR Zero. I'll link to her original announcement video for the challenge down below. Leandra has two different challenges as part of this month-long reading challenge. One is a game board and the other is a cover scavenger hunt with 31 prompts. There are a few different ways that you can participate in the cover scavenger hunt. The way that I'm doing it is there are these 31 prompts that she set up, and they are all something that has to be on the cover of a book, and I am reading books that have one of those things on the cover. I am filming this introduction a little bit later after the video you're about to see. I realized that I needed to explain the challenge a little bit better, so previous Julia is going to take it away with my TBR. I have already started. It's a little bit into October now when I'm filming this, and so I've already read 4 books for this challenge. I'm going to go in order of the prompt on the list rather than what order I finished them in, because I don't think I can really remember at this point. But the books that I've already read for this challenge are We Set the Dark on Fire for the fire prompt. That's by Taylor K. Mejia. I read his book Castelgado is Living the Dream earlier, and it was one of my favorite romances of the year so far. So I finally put these on my TBR, these being the 2 books in the duology. And I don't think I'll do reviews for all of these because I'll talk about them in my end of the month wrap up. So I'll just get through them kind of quickly here. The book that I've read for the teeth prompt is What Stalks the Deep by T. Kingfisher. For the fruit and vegetable prompt, I read Let's Get Together by Brandy Colbert. And for the weapon prompt, I read Fate's Bane by C.L. Clark. I am currently reading and am 76% of the way through The Bewitching by Sylvia Moreno Garcia, and that is either going to be for the bird prompt or the witchy item prompt, because someone is doing witchcraft with a bird on the cover here. I am not necessarily going to get through all of this stack. This is not all of the books I'm going to read either, but this is sort of aspirational. I just took everything that I wanted to read this month and made it fit for a prompt. Some books I actually am reading specifically for this challenge, but some of them are just getting shoehorned in there. For either Black or Signs of Death, I'm reading the Formidable Miss Cassidy by Mayhan Bohi. So this is about a governess in Singapore in, I want to say, the 30s. Doesn't actually say, that's just kind of vibes. And I feel like it reads as kind of like a supernatural Mary Poppins to me. That was recommended to me by Sia over at Every Book a Doorway. Gotta start depleting this stack here. Gonna make a reverse stack on the floor. Next, a book that I just got yesterday because I had pre-ordered it and I went to pick it up and it just came out yesterday, is The Door on the Sea by Cassidy Russell. This has been described as a Tlingit and Lord of the Rings inspired fantasy, which is a premise that maybe has excited me the most as any book that I wanted to read this year. So I might do a separate reading vlog for this, actually. I'm all of 2 pages in. But this is going to be for the bird prompt, if for some reason I end up not using the Bewitching for that prompt. I don't have anything to hold up, but for stars, I'm reading The Calculating Stars by Mary Robinette Kowal. I've had this on my old e-reader since probably 2019, and I just really need to read it. It's one of the oldest books on my TBR, and I'm trying to clear that out, so I really need to get to that this month, and I'm saying that so strongly because I have the feeling that I'm not going to, but we'll see, future Julia. For orange, I have The Devil 3 Times by Ricky Fain. Speaking of premises that I'm excited about, this is such a banging premise that it sold me on that alone, but it is a generational story, which I love. I always talk about Homegoing and Pachinko, but there are lots of other ones and ones that I have on my TBR, and I kind of want to write a fantasy generational story because I feel like they're all real world. I think that'd be a really interesting world building exercise. But I'm getting away from myself here. So this is a story about 10 generations of a Black family, and God has told the devil that he can get back into heaven if he can sort of save this family. Anyway, that's the premise that I understand. And so over 10 generations, the devil keeps visiting this family. And I'm just so immensely excited by that premise. I guess this is like the fantasy, or rather speculative, generational story that I've been looking for. And just from reading the first few pages, it has a sort of like folk tale, like American South folk tale voice to it, which I wouldn't expect it to be written any other way when it's about like God and the devil. And oh man, I'm so excited to get to this. I'm going past several prompts here. I'm not trying to read all 31. I have ideas for most of them, but I'm not going to read 31 books this month. It's not earlier this year when I read 34 books in March. But I had fun coming up with ideas for what I might read for the prompt. For trees, I am going to read Natural Connections by, I always want to say Connections, it's Connection, by Joycelyn Longden. I had to have this shipped from the UK via Blackwell's because it's not being printed in the US, but I actually saw in a post by Joycelyn on Instagram about this book, and Robert McFarlane, my current favorite author, blurbed it, so I paid extra to have it shipped over here. And it's just one of those books where like you buy it and you're really excited and you're waiting for it to come, and then it sits on your shelf. So I'm really gonna try and read this month. For Human, which is kind of just like a throw whatever book you want in this prompt, I may or may not get to Harmattan Season by Tochi Onyebuchi. I saw this in not even my local library, just a library within my system that I happened to be in one day because I was downloading an audiobook on their Wi-Fi, and I told myself, I was like, don't get any books when you go in there, Julie, you have enough holds checked out, and I walked out with 2 books. So this is sort of a, I believe like African noir, but if I end up reading it, I'm going to put it under the Human prompt. For Purple, if I can get to it, I'm going to read A Spectral Hue by Craig Lawrence Gidney. I'm also planning on reading this for r/fantasy bingo for the self-published or small press square. So if I don't get to it for this one, I'm definitely still going to read it within the coming months. But this is a story about this young man who's an artist who goes to a town where several artists that he's inspired by lived, and a lot of the people in this town, there seem to be like supernatural things going on, and this town is like intricately linked with this specific shade of the color purple. The color purple. Okay, we're getting down to the last 2 prompts here. For Witchy Item, I'm going to read Blood at the Root by Ladarian Williams. I may also put the Bewitching in this spot, I don't know, but obviously Witchy Item. A good book for this season because it is sort of about a witch school that is, I think, like an HBCU in the South. Yeah, that's sort of the like the vibe of the school. And lastly, on my real TBR for this month is Ladylike by Mackenzie Lee for the mask prompt, because there are, like, you can see very tiny drama masks on here. This is a sapphic, I think Victorian or Regency romance, and I just try and read all of those. Next, these are just books that I have checked out from the library. I may or may not get to them. This is a book that I checked out today. I might read this tonight. I don't fucking know. But this is Speak Easy by Catherine M. Valente. This wasn't even on my TBR, but I went to the library during my lunch break today, and I was like, I need to read a Catherine Valente because I read Radiance earlier this year, and it's one of my favorite books I read this year. It's not my first Catherine M. Valente. That was Six Gun Snow White, and I've read probably a few of her short stories. I don't know exactly why I haven't read from her before. I think like I tried reading The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in a Ship of Her Own Making, and the voice just wasn't for me. I think I was a little bit too young. And it's just for an age range that I'm not in anymore. But Radiance just rocked my world. And this is sort of set during a similar time period. I'm like obsessed with deco punk right now, or rather deco, because it's art deco punk. And so I am looking forward to reading this, and I hope that it gives me the same emotions that Radiance did. And then this one is ridiculous. I don't know why I grabbed this one. But this is Strangers in the Land by Michael Lowe. And I've been really excited to read this book, but as you can see, it's very long. This little tab, I do this for books that have a bibliography to let me know when the actual end of the book is, because this is like the index and the bibliography and stuff, which nonfiction books should have. But it just lets me know when I'm like sort of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel and not getting discouraged by the page count. But this is a nonfiction account of Chinese Americans, just sort of like the history of Chinese people living in America and immigration and the Chinese Exclusion Act and all of that. I sort of got interested in this because it reminds me of Mott Street by Ava Chin, which I read late last year and really, really enjoyed. It was sort of a like nonfiction generational story about a woman's family members and how they lived in New York Chinatown for many years. Little side tangent, but I just really liked Mott Street, and her great-grandmothers on her mother and father's side were neighbors in the same apartment building in like the 30s, which is just crazy to me. But I'm probably not going to get to this in October. I might have to return this before I'm done reading it, but I just really want to give it a go. I don't know why I got it physically, okay? I told myself I was going to get this on my e-reader so I wouldn't have to carry this around or hold it up while I'm reading it. But I saw it at the library, and next thing I knew, I was walking out with it. So those are all of the books that I am planning on reading for TBR Harvest. Like I said, I am 76% of the way through The Bewitching by Silvia Moreno Garcia, and I'll talk about my thoughts about it real quick since I'm gonna spend some time this evening reading it. It's been quite slow so far, and the sort of like ostensibly the main character, Minerva, who is in the 1998 timeline. Sorry, I should explain about this book. So speaking of generational stories and my love for them, this is a generational horror story which follows three women in three different timelines. There's Minerva, who is a grad student in New England in 1998. She's from Mexico City. Her grandmother, who when she was I think like 17, 19-year-old living in the mountains of Mexico in 1908. And then a woman named Beatrice Tremblay, who was a horror writer, sort of pulp horror writer. Minerva is writing her thesis on her, and we have her account from 1934. So we're following these three women in alternating chapters as all three of them, or people that they love, are beset by some kind of phenomenon or monster. And it's not clear yet, at this point in the story, what that is. I have my suspicions about what or who is doing the perpetration in each timeline, but Minerva, the 1998 timeline, her chapters are very slow, and she's suffering from a lot of like depression and isolation, which makes her chapters not very fun to read about. And then Beatrice's chapters, there's fewer of those, but I really like the voice of kind of the like a bit overwrought 30s. It's really speaking to the era that both in the universe and Morena Garcia herself are paying homage to. So I like that voice. I think it's very distinct. And then there's so much going on in Alba's timeline. Oh my gosh. Her uncle, I don't want to give spoilers, but oh my god, that guy. So it definitely picked up once the other POVs got introduced, because we start with Minerva. She is sort of the like present day character. This is the fourth Moreno Garcia book that I've read. I've read two novellas by her, and then Gods of Jaden's Shadow is the other novel that I've read by her. And I keep trying her. I don't want to give up on her. Her stuff doesn't always work for me. I feel like her protagonists are kind of always at an arm's length from me, and they always fall for the wrong guy. It's really annoying. And in Gods of Jaden's Shadow, I really had an issue with her writing style, where it seemed like she was doing a specific voice for that book that I really didn't gel with, that she doesn't do in other things, so it seemed like it was deliberate. She can definitely do like a different voice as shown in this book, where all of the different protagonists definitely have, like, I could pick a paragraph from one of them and know which protagonist I was reading from. But I am going to get to reading a little bit here. I'm hoping to finish this tonight, and I'll see if my theories prove correct. I'm gonna be pretty mad if they not, because I feel like there have been some like flashing red warning lights over certain characters' heads that I don't trust. I don't trust the characters, not the flashing lights. But I also worry that there's gonna be like a rug pull and it's gonna be someone that I didn't suspect. But I think that the people that I'm thinking of have very good motives for being the bad person, the witch or whoever, so we'll see. I'm home alone right now and it's nighttime, and this book is actually genuinely freaking me out. Where it hasn't before, it's just been kind of atmospheric, but the main character's Minerva's house is sort of like under attack, and there's like pounding on the door and like scratching at the windows, and as I'm saying this out loud, I'm like expecting to hear noises. Like the neighbor downstairs is gonna move furniture and I'm gonna scream. But yeah, I'm a little creeped out right now. I was right. Ha 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 ha. I was right a second time. Ha ha ha. I've just finished The Bewitching by Sylvia Moreno Garcia, and I thought that the ending was super satisfying. There wasn't a lot of like big action moments. It was definitely a quiet horror, that kind of creeping dread, very atmospheric. It was set during the summer, but definitely had the New England and fall vibes, where the epilogue takes place like a few days from Halloween. And my theories were correct, but in a way where I thought it was very satisfying. And I'm gonna give it a 3.25. I think it was better than average, but not one of my favorite books of the year or anything like that. Oh, and when I was adding The Bewitching to the TBR Harvest Challenge on the Storygraph, I saw that someone else had added this to the green prompt, so I just added it to that one because the bird prompt is taken up by Door on the Sea, and the like witchy items prompt is taken up by Blood at the Root, so it's gonna be green, at least for now. I can't decide which book to start next, so I'm gonna read the first 3 chapters of my 3 top candidates and see which one I want to keep reading with. So I've got The Formidable Miss Cassidy by Bane Bohe, The Door on the Sea by Cassidy Russell, and Speakeasy by Catherine M. Valente. And aiding me in this are going to be some appropriate bookmarks for my bookmark collection. So I've got this one, and this one. This one is by The Seasonal Pages. They do really awesome art. I've bought way too many bookmarks and stickers from them, so go check them out at theseasonalpages.com. It's not sponsored, I just think they're neat. This one is by one of my favorite fan artists, Leia Rose. She also does great book reviews on the Storygraph at Himalaya. If you're interested, she reads a lot of aromantic and asexual books as well as sapphic books, and our tastes align really well. Pretty much every book that I read, she has reviewed it before me, and that's how well our tastes align. And then this bookmark is from a local company called Native Northwest, and the artist is Terry Starr. So I'm going to start with Speakeasy, read a chapter, and see what I think. This is giving everything. It's everything that I wanted. It's that Valente charm. Dang. Okay, listen to this. One man rules it all, even when he's not there, even when he's back home counting money and bones. Oh, everyone knows who. If you saw him on the street, you'd make a path for the shortest man in town, strutting along in his pixie-colored suits. The dapper never wears the same ones twice. Tangerine, Granny Smith, grape popsicle, cotton candy. There's belladonna in his pockets, foxglove in his lapel, and a golden pistol in the lipstick linings of his jackets. The man powders his face like a dame at town, half an inch thick if it's none. Folks say a fella sliced up his face over a dance hall girl years back, scarred his cheek something terrible. But it just ain't so. If he didn't pile it on, his boys would see he wasn't quite right. The color of his skin too blue, his ears too long, and I tell ya, if you look in his eyes too long, you can see a ring of stars like toadstools at the bottom of their black. Call him what you want, Scarface, Boss, Big Daddy, King of the Fairies, and Lord of the Dead. Most everyone around here just calls him Al. Ah, it's so good! Okay, that's the end of the first chapter. Okay, and now we're going to start The Door on the Sea. Okay, I was already partway through that chapter, and it was fairly short, but I'm liking it so far. It has a very storytelling tone to it, and you know what? It's reminding me quite a bit of The Raven Scholar, which I read earlier this year, and it's one of my favorite books of the year, where like a raven is the main character, and the raven is very cheeky and mischievous, and that is kind of woven into the narration, which is funny because I mean, those two books were being written at the same time, so they couldn't have possibly influenced each other. But yeah, I'm excited to see where this goes. And I'm going to try the Formidable Miss Cassidy next. You know what this is reminding me of? When I was younger, I read a book by Eva Abbotson, who was one of my favorite authors as a kid, called Journey to the River Sea. And in that book, there's a fabulous governess character who is wonderful and no nonsense and kind but takes no shit. And this is like if she were the main character of a book, and I'm very excited by that prospect. Dope. Absolutely dope. So glad that I'm reading this in October. Oh my gosh. So, I'm really intrigued by this. So, as I said, this is set in Singapore. I thought it was in the 1930s, but it's actually 1895. And at the time, Singapore was occupied by the British, and so this Scottish woman, Leda Cassidy, has come to be the governess for a young British girl and has already bonded with the Singaporean staff of the house, and everyone has warned her that the house is haunted by something called a, how do you pronounce it? Pontianak, which is basically like a female vampire. And Miss Cassidy is very clearly experienced with the supernatural, and she's so practical. I love her. So, not what I expected, but I think I'm actually going to read this one next, which is great because it is the one that is due the most recently. So I'm going to keep reading the Formidable Miss Cassidy.
Let me make myself tiny. And then I will go ahead and start the timer. Happy sprinting, happy TBR harvest, and happy 1st of October.
If there was one thing Miss Cassidy was good at, it was waiting. Of course, she was good at many, many, many things, but she had perfected patience to an art. So, Miss Cassidy has a crush on Mr. K. He's a businessman from Singapore, and he has his twin daughters that he wants her to tutor. And they've only had one scene together, but their chemistry is amazing. Like, I'm giggling and kicking my feet over here. I think it's because Miss Cassidy is so competent and unflappable, but when she met Mr. K, she was like, and I'm like, oh, Miss Cassidy! So I'm really excited to see where that goes. They're very cute. Okay, I haven't really read anything since I last updated you, since I was editing the video as I was filming it. But it's late. I am going to head off to bed. I am 64 pages into the Formidable Miss Cassidy, and I'm really enjoying it, and I will update you once I've read more. I'm lucky enough to be doing a reading sprint with Leandra the TBR Zero live because I'm on my lunch break, and I'm reading the Formidable Miss Cassidy again. And we just found out that Miss Cassidy is an immortal fae. I think, like, she's called a lady seed. I never know how to pronounce this word. Sidhe, C, I think. And she's met some kind of, like, high-powered magical being in a Hindu temple, and is very, like, deferential to her and is asking her advice. And then this lady is braiding her hair. It's very sweet. I'm really enjoying this. Oh my gosh. Like, Miss Cassidy met Boudica and said that she liked her. So, man, what has this woman seen? Also, there was a point where her young charge, Sarah Jane, was getting kind of hysterical, and Miss Cassidy just goes like, sit down, and like shoves her onto the couch, and then basically like puts her to sleep just by like touching her. It's great. I want to be her when I grow up. I just finished part 1 of the Formidable Miss Cassidy, so I am now officially halfway through this book, and I'm really enjoying this. Like, I'm giggling and kicking my feet at some points. I'm just delighted by the dialogue and the characters, and this video is not focusing. Come on, there we go. I don't want to spoil anything because there's been some reveals, but Miss Cassidy is definitely more than she seems at first glance. In ways that delighted me and surprised me. And she has recently had a change in her circumstances, and so there are now going to be a different plot proceeding, although still with characters that she already knows that she met earlier in the book. So I'm really enjoying this. I'm excited to see where it goes. It's so readable, not just like fun to read, but just very easy to read and very witty, and I'm really glad that I found it. I just finished The Formidable Miss Cassidy, and I really liked it. I thought that it was very sweet. I loved seeing the details of turn of the century Singapore and this one woman's place in it. I really like the fact that she was just a governess and a tutor and like a member of the staff, and just didn't lead a very glamorous life and would help in the kitchen and do all these other things. And I just really liked how down to earth she was, while at the same time being a kind of like mysterious fae figure. The book is episodic, being in 2 parts, and then there's a sort of part 3 that is an epilogue. I thought that was fitting for the type of story that it was, where she's moving from family to family. There were some characters like Mr. K, who I mentioned before, who were in all of the parts that tied it together. And I think I'm going to rate it 4 stars. No, 4.25. I think that the ending, the part 3, was a little bit too long. I think that it could have been resolved in just a chapter, but I loved the characters and the setting and the like whimsical writing style. Probably unsurprisingly, based on my reaction to the first chapter, I am going to read Speakeasy by Catherine. This is upside down. Speakeasy by Catherine Valente next, and I figured out that I can use it for the indoor setting prompt for TBR Harvest because it mainly takes place in a hotel. I'm gonna put on some 1920s music, maybe some like hotel bar ambience, and get to reading. I finished Speakeasy by Catherine Valente. I could have finished it last night, but I was getting tired and I was like pushing myself to finish it and noticed that I was just having a bad time, and I'm trying not to do that. I've ruined a few books by pushing myself through reading them even when I'm tired, and then afterwards I only have a negative impression of them. So I waited until today to finish, so I finished on my lunch break, and I left the book at work so I can return it to the library, which is why I don't have it here. I really liked the prose. I mean, you saw my reaction when I was first reading it. And that type of prose is beautiful, but it's also a little bit exhausting and a little bit hard to parse, where I would be reading a sentence and then go like, wait, I didn't understand what I just read. There were a lot of nouns and adjectives in that sentence. Local reader discovers nouns and adjectives in sentence. I wouldn't say that it was overwritten. It was definitely a stylistic choice. And like I said, I didn't like Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland. I loved Radiance. And in Radiance, she's doing a lot of different voices, right? She's got scripts and transcripts and advertisements, and it's not all in that fairy tale extreme prose style. So I think that the problem that I had with Speakeasy was not present in Radiance because of that. At the same time, I was immensely inspired by the writing style, and although I haven't wanted to write in a good 2 weeks probably because I've been reading a lot, I itched to pick up a pen and start practicing her style, because descriptive writing is something that I've struggled with, where if I could get away with it, I would just write dialogue, and then I need to go back in and add all the descriptors. But this made me want to really get like fluffy with the writing and the descriptions and the metaphors and the whimsical things happening. So I did really like that aspect of it. The plot was not very prevalent, I would say. I haven't even told you what this book is about. It is a jazz age retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses, although if you didn't know that going in, you probably wouldn't be able to tell. Now, is my favorite Barbie movie Barbie and the 12 Dancing Princesses? Yes. Did that predispose me to understand what was going on? No. I mean, there wasn't a talking parrot for one thing. And also, it was a like Zelda Fitzgerald and F. Scott Fitzgerald story, sort of recasting them as these two people in a hotel. So it had a lot of atmosphere going on, but not a lot of the plot moving forward. As they say, no plot, just vibes. And the vibes were great. The vibes were just everywhere and in your face. And it really gave you that jazz age, like bubbly champagne biting into a cupcake with all the frosting and the sprinkles and the crunch. But I wasn't really reading it for the plot. So I ended up giving it 3 stars. If the prose had been different and less flamboyant and colorful, it would have rated lower. But it's one of those books where like, it's not an even 3 across the board. It's like plot 1, prose 5, and so it evened out to a 3. Next, I showed you my TBR and everything, and I've made it through some of the books on that TBR, and now I'm a little bit stuck in deciding what I want to read next. I think I'm a little bit overwhelmed. So I'm going to let a spinner wheel choose the next book that I'm going to read for TBR Harvest. So the 7 books on here are Natural Connection, The Door on the Sea, The Calculating Stars, Blood at the Root, Ladylike, The Devil 3 Times, and Harmattan Season. Okay. Ooh, ooh. Ah. I've practiced a few times with the spinner wheel, and I love the little sound it makes. It's so jolly. All right, so I'm going to be reading Natural Connection next. All right, Natural Connection by Joycelyn Longden. This is a book of nature writing and also about the connection that marginalized communities have with nature and the wisdom of peoples and communities that have been around for a very long time and have a very entrenched relationship with nature, and how we can learn from those going forward in our climate change ravaged world. I'm really glad this came up because I have been excited to read this, and that excitement has just been eclipsed by getting distracted by other things, and so it's finally time to sit down and read this. And this will be used for the tree prompt on the TBR challenge. For this book, I'm going to be using my Salish Sea bookmark, which is by Elizabeth Person, and I'll link to her down below as well. And since this is a hardback that I own and I want it to be protected, I'm going to use this hardback pouch that my mom and I sewed together with some scrap fabric that she had. And when I'm, on the go, gonna hang out with some friends tomorrow, I will keep it in here. I had a great day yesterday. I went to hang out with some friends, but I didn't get that much reading done in Natural Connection. And today I've been filming some videos and my voice is a little tired. So I'm gonna head over to my local cafe, read for a little bit, and get a hot drink. I am now halfway through Natural Connection by Joycelyn Longden, which I am enjoying. It's definitely taking a lot of concentration and brain power to read. Not that it's bad or poorly written, it's just that it's a nonfiction book that's going over a lot of different concepts and ideas that I'm really having to concentrate to digest and sit with. It's kind of a hard book to rate in that I can't talk about characters or pacing or anything like that, but it is teaching me a lot. It's divided into sections on how we can combat climate change with rage, imagination, and I'm on the section that is about innovation right now. There have been a lot of examples of people around the world using traditional knowledge to defend nature or using a relationship with nature to innovate in some way or combat climate change. I was just reading about a natural air conditioning. You may be seen online in Iran, there are these very tall towers that have holes in them that cool air can come in through and then hot air leaves to the top. It's a very old traditional form of air cooling. And so she's talking about that as an example of AC that doesn't require any electricity, and how innovation sometimes means looking back at old technology and ancient wisdom or the wisdom of our elders to come up with something new. I think something that's maybe tripping me up a little bit is her sentence structure can be a little bit weird sometimes, where there can kind of be these run-on sentences. I've also noticed grammatical errors once or twice where there haven't been an end quotation to a quote, so I'm not quite sure when the quotation stopped, but there have only been one or two of those. It is certainly a book designed to give you hope and energize you to think about the world in a different way and change your life and do something to make a difference. So that is good and hopeful, even if it is sometimes challenging, as it should be. But I'm going to take a break from reading now. I've got D&D in just a few minutes, but when I resume, I will hopefully get to reading the second half of and finishing this book. Oh my god, my room is cold. Just finished Natural Connection by Joycelyn Longden a little bit ago, and while I did like this book, it took me a while to read, but most nonfiction books I can't just sit down and rush through them like I would with a fantasy book. They're just paced differently, and while they're still engaging, they can just keep my attention differently. I thought this book was very hopeful and very full of calls to action and actionable things that we can do to combat climate change and help our communities and be innovators and carers. I just kept wanting more from it, where I think that the author spread herself a little bit too thin across topics and across case studies. She had all these examples for each section of people doing innovation or using rage to combat climate injustice and ecological racism, but it would only be a few pages or paragraphs. I really wanted her to go more in depth on just everything, and then she would start a section with a personal anecdote where she went to visit her family in Ghana a few times, but then we never returned to that, so I wanted to see more of her connection to these places and organizations. I wanted to have more of her voice and almost character in it, and while this is by no means a requirement when reading a nature book, I do like there to be a little bit of a travel aspect, and there wasn't really much of that in here, which is not a bad thing in this book. It's just something that I look for that wasn't really there, aside from the brief description of her times in Ghana. I also kept having an issue where when she wasn't talking about a case study or her own personal experience and she would go into more summing up of information or talking about theory, the writing became really difficult for me to parse, and she would often have these really unnecessarily dense sentences where she would list out several adjectives or even synonyms, and that problem was not present when she was talking about people or events. And so when it came to the theory or talking about the more philosophical aspects of the book, she lost me for sure. I think part of that is due to I struggle with abstract concepts sometimes, and it's a lot easier for me to grasp more tangible things, but also I think that her writing changed dramatically, and she's just started to pile on words and had kind of run-on sentences, and I think that those sections of the book could have been more clear. But I'm still glad that I bought it and that I read it. I'm going to rate it 3.5 stars. That is going to be the end of this vlog. I'm going to continue to read books for TBR Harvest. I'm continuing to read books in October and listen to audiobooks, and I will update you at the end of the month with all the books I read and my thoughts on them. Thanks again to Leandra at Leandra the TBR0. I am so happy to be participating in this readathon.